I knew that if I was caught, I'll be killed. I was born to a Chinese father and North Korean mother. But when I was 5, my father abandoned us and left to China and never returned. And lost my mother 6 years later from starvation. So I ended up living with my aunt until my father sent my stepbrother to take me to China. So I ended up in my father's place in China in 2008. Life in China was so much better. I was so happy because I was living my life in freedom. But the happiness that I felt in China was only temporary because Chinese government didn't recognize North Koreans as refugees and they deported back us to North Korea. The North Korean government wanted me to confess that I was trying to defect to South Korea. But the truth was, I went to China to find my father. I had no desire to defect and beg them to understand. I didn't confess, and after beating me for weeks, they sent me to labor camp. I was only 15. In the labor camp, I was only allowed to eat 150 kernels of corn a day. One morning, we were marching in our roast, our work site, and I saw a dry vomit on the road. I was so hungry that I got on my hands and knees and began picking the rice out of the vomited rice. I didn't stop eating the vomited rice until the beating from the guards were too unbearable. 8 months later, I was finally released because I couldn't even stand up or even lift my arm. After spending months trying to regain my strength, I needed to find a job. I began working in a coal mine where I was paid only in rice. Cave-ins were common, and I saw other boys lose their arms and legs as they're smashed into the rocks. And I watched my friend die when the coal cart fell off the track and crushed him. I worked in the mine about a year, and I realized it was my time to try to escape North Korea again. I knew how hard escaping North Korea would be without any money or food. And I knew that if I was caught, I'll be killed. But those risks overweighted working in the dark coal mine every day until it was my turn to lose a limb or die. One morning, instead of entering the mine, I walked up the path and began running. I spent the next 3 months hiding from the police and waiting for an opportunity to travel to the border town. On a humid day in August, I was lying down on a hillside. And in the distance, I saw a train come to stop, and I realized the train was going to the border town. And as the passengers boarded again, I joined the line. And the guard would ask for my papers and documents, and I lied that my mother had them and that she was already on the train. He nodded, and I headed straight for the train bathroom to hide. I spent the next 2 days hiding from the police. I was almost to the border town when the hands of a guard grabbed the back of my neck and dragged me to a holding cell on the train. I thought about how terrible the labor camp had been. The long days of manual labor, sleepless night that I spent memorizing the rules, and the constant feelings of hunger. I refused to let that happen again. As the train began to slow down for the next stop, I saw a window was unlocked, so I pushed it open and squeezed out of the small openings. I jumped off the moving train and rolled into a ditch and began sprinting for some nearby trees. I ran for hours, illegally boarded a second train, and 2 days later I finally made it to the border town. I walked into the river that divides North Korea and China, and I hid on the tall grass for 8 hours waiting for the darkness. When I finally thought it was safe, I quietly waded into the water. In the middle of the river, I slipped on a rock and let out a scream. Immediately, a floodlight was on my back, and I heard a guard screaming at me. He said that he would shoot me if I didn't turn back. I knew that I was dead either way. Either he would shoot me, or I would obey and return to the shore, only to be shipped off to a labor camp. I decided not to turn back. Each step took me further away from North Korea and closer to my dream of freedom. And 5 minutes later, I was dripping wet, but finally back in China. I walked in China for 3 days until somebody found me collapsed in the middle of the road. I was hungry, and I was dehydrated, and I was exhausted. When the man that found me realized that I was from North Korea, he helped me to make a contact with the people who helped me to come to Southeast Asia, where I was processed to come to the United States. I remember looking out the window as the plane began to land in California. I've never dreamed of being on a plane or even coming to America. And as I stepped off the plane, I felt this strange feeling that I've never known before. safety. I was finally safe, and I didn't need to hide anymore. And I came to America 5 years ago, and in that time, I have learned English, graduated from high school, worked as a sushi chef. My life in America has not been easy, but this is land of opportunity. And I know that if I work hard, I can achieve my dreams.
There's a North Korean refugee in China ready to make the dangerous journey to freedom. Our partners on the ground spring into action. Because Chinese authorities actively arrest and return refugees to North Korea, every hour counts. We make contact with the person, telling them to move to a rendezvous point in northeast China. From here, they'll join a group of other North Korean refugees, and together, they'll begin their escape. But what lies between this safe house and freedom is 3,000 miles of foreign country, dotted with security checkpoints, state-of-the-art Chinese surveillance, and the serious threat of being caught and forcibly sent back to the regime. The rescue route is like a modern-day underground railroad. At each leg of the journey, a new partner meets the group and guides them onward. The routes are always changing. A route that is safe one day might be too dangerous the next. The group constantly switches between trains, buses, cars, boats, and even walking on foot. They don't stop to eat. It's too dangerous to be in one place for too long. The most tense moment is usually at the southern Chinese border. If arrested here, it's undeniable to the regime that these refugees are defecting to South Korea, and the punishment that awaits them can be even more severe. The group safely crosses and the most pressing danger has passed. But even though they're out of the immediate reach of the Chinese authorities, the journey is far from over. Between them and their final destination is some of the world's most inhospitable jungle. The refugees trek through wilderness and climb miles of steep mountain terrain. After hours of mosquitoes, scorching heat, and suffocating humidity, the group emerges from the jungle. Link's field team is ready. They load up the rescue vehicle and race toward the pickup zone. The partner gives the group a cell phone to communicate with Link's field team until they can make contact at the pickup. The refugees describe what they see around them as the team tries to narrow in on their location. The rescue vehicle careens around a corner and the group is in the distance. The field team swings open the door and pulls everyone into the vehicle. It's likely a local has called the police to report seeing North Korean refugees. They must leave the area as quickly as possible. The group races away from the pickup zone and it starts to sink in. They are finally free for the first time in their lives.
Another extreme provocation by the words between the DPL.
Bullets flying, a North Korean soldier makes a daring escape across the border to the south.
We hope that one day, when we look back on what we did today, we will be able to say that we did the right thing for the people of North Korea.
North Koreans are fighting hard to survive. They have to have hope to survive. This is my message to you. Have hope for yourself, but also help each other.